Secretary of State Marco Rubio announcing Monday that 83% of the programs under USAID, approximately 5,200 contracts, will be canceled, capping a weeks-long effort to dismantle the foreign aid organization. Rubio said the remaining programs will be administered under his department. He also thanked Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency after reportedly clashing with the billionaire turned presidential advisor last week during a cabinet meeting. To discuss the potential impacts, we're bringing in White House columnist Niall Stanage. Niall, thanks for joining us. Secretary Rubio said these canceled contracts were hurting U.S. national interest. What do we know about these contracts?
Not a lot in terms of exactly what he means with that charge. Generally speaking, the criticism, even from within the Trump administration of USAID, has been that these contracts aren't doing anything to help American interests, or they're wasteful, or they're going to, so-called woke projects elsewhere. That seems to me different from what he is now suggesting, which is that they actually hurt. And we've very few really concrete examples of that. Added to which, DOGE has got in difficulty in the recent past because some of the claims it has made about USAID and the savings have proven not to be true, most notably the $50 million of condoms to Gaza, which never actually happened.
Secretary Rubio said he would consult Congress to administer the remaining contracts. Why is the administration consulting Congress now?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, this is the big battle, I suppose, where DOGE and the effort to reduce government is concerned, because Congress has, for the most part, got money that it has specifically apportioned to various departments, maybe not to specific projects always, but to the departments themselves. So now there's this battle between Congress on one hand and the executive, the Trump administration on the other, and we're seeing that play out.
I'm going to shift gears here a little bit. As of Monday, Ontario has matched Trump's 25% tariffs. There's new tax placed on energy into New York, Minnesota, Michigan. Do you think that this will make Trump back off, or is he going to double down on these tariffs?
If we know anything about him, it's that he's more likely to double down in these kind of cases, because I think he will see these new tariffs to some extent as a challenge to him. And he's very loath to back down when it gets to that kind of direct confrontation. There are other ways in which he can back down without saying that he's doing that. Maybe we'll get to that in a second. But these kind of tariffs, I don't think will encourage him to back down.
And big news out of Canada. The ruling party there voted in a new Prime Minister, Mark Carney. He's an economist. He's the former governor of both the Bank of Canada, the Bank of England. How do you expect Carney to handle this trade war going forward?
One of the interesting things there, Judy, was that Carney in his victory speech was pretty combative toward Trump and toward the United States. He was talking about the fact that Canada can, in his view, no longer trust the US. And he was also saying pretty bluntly that Canada aims to win this trade war. So not much of a note of conciliation there, more of an oppositional kind of approach.
We are seeing a bit of pushback, even amongst Republicans on these tariffs. Stephen Moore, former economic advisor to Trump, called the tariffs misguided. Senator Susan Collins, a moderate Republican, said tariffs will have a detrimental impact. You said that Trump is likely to double down when faced with criticism, but do you think some of the GOP pushback will make a difference?
I'm not sure it will be the GOP pushback, because this is a topic in which Trump has already departed from Republican orthodoxy. Republicans for years, if not decades, had been the party of free trade, had been broadly opposed to tariffs. And so the voices that you're talking about, Senator Collins or Stephen Moore, the economist, those are people who are from that more traditional wing. Trump is different from that. I'm not sure how receptive he will be to those criticisms.
Is there a point that you think President Trump could reverse course on the tariffs?
Oh, I absolutely do. And it's not because of criticisms like the ones we're just talking about. It's things like the effects on the stock market. Now, as you and I are talking, maybe it'll be different by the end of the day. The stock market is down again very steeply today. That has been the case, in recent days, in recent weeks for that matter. The tariff uncertainty is plainly roiling the stock market. And I think Trump is sensitive to that.
before I let you go, Secretary Rubio in Saudi Arabia today. Go back to that minerals deal that President Zelensky was set to sign. Do you think that Ukrainian President Zelensky will sign that minerals deal?
I think he probably will in the end. I mean, he has, generally speaking, indicated a willingness to do so. Now, obviously, there's been a lot of tensions recently. Zelensky wants security guarantees in return for that deal, and it doesn't look like he's going to get them, but he might sign the deal in an effort to at least somewhat mollify President Trump and try to repair relationships.
Do you think that signing the deal will repair that relationship?
I'm not sure that it will entirely, because I think President Trump has put the United States in such an unusual position, almost stepping right up to the line of adopting a pro-Russia position on the war. And obviously, Zelensky's not going to accept that.
Niall Stanage, thank you so much for joining us.
Good to see you.
And a Maryland traveler has health officials scrambling after testing positive for measles shortly after returning home. The state now worried that resident spread the measles to others at Dulles Airport in Virginia and at Johns Hopkins Pediatric Emergency Department. Infections are soaring nationwide, with more than a dozen states reporting cases in the last few weeks. News Nation's Xavier Walton joins us now with the latest.
So right now, health officials are looking for anyone that came in contact with that person that tested positive for the measles out of the Dulles Airport. However, should mention that person did not come in contact with anyone from the Texas or New Mexico outbreak. Still, we're talking about measles, one of the most contagious viruses in the world. Health officials are still extremely concerned and expect it to continue to grow, at least the numbers with the outbreak. So far, there have been at least 220 cases of measles confirmed in more than a dozen states, most recently Maryland. Meantime, Florida health officials said a high school student there tested positive for the virus. However, majority of the cases involved children who didn't receive the MMR vaccine. Of all the states, still, Texas and New Mexico have reported the most cases, nearly 200, with the Lone Star State alone. Also, at least 2 deaths have been reported, according to the CDC. An unvaccinated school-aged child in Texas and an unvaccinated adult in New Mexico marked the first measles deaths in the U.S. since 2015. And to make matters worse, doctors say more cases are expected as this outbreak continues. It's gotten to the point where some states are sending out measles alerts. Federal disease detectives from the CDC have been deployed to hardest hit areas like West Texas, where the bulk of the cases have been reported. Health and Human Services Secretary RFK Jr. weighing in on the measles outbreak, calling the vaccine a good one, but the decision to get it is a personal choice. And in a recent op-ed, RFK Jr. also saying good nutrition and vitamin-rich foods are a best defense against chronic and infectious disease. And he noted vitamin A can be used to treat measles. However, health officials are worried about the federal government's messaging when it comes to vitamin A. Here's what a senior scholar at Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security had to say about that RFK recommendation.
So I don't think these are good recommendations. I don't think they'll have any impact on this outbreak in the United States. And yes, vitamin A is important in places like Africa, but this isn't Africa. We don't have vitamin A deficiency. And yeah, I think this is something that people should really not pay much attention to and really focus on getting the vaccine into the arms of the unvaccinated.
Doctors certainly not trying to scare anyone, but just raising that heightened level of awareness. Meantime, Texas health officials believe the outbreak out in West Texas should last at least another couple of months. Plus, you got to factor in it's spring break travel season. That plays a role as well. From Dallas, Xavier Walton, News Nation.
News Nation's Xavier Walton, thank you. Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick says he wants to rename a restaurant staple, at least in the Lone Star State. In a post to social media last week, Patrick mentioned changing the name of the New York Strip to Texas Strip. The popular cut of beef reportedly got its name after becoming a preferred cut at the Manhattan restaurant Delmonico's. But the Lieutenant Governor Patrick says he wants the change to catch on to honor the side of Texas's beef industry. He said the Texas Senate will file a resolution soon to officially change the name. Encounters at the U.S.-Mexico border are down. ICE arrests are up. In today's Political Minute, News Nation chief Washington correspondent and host of The Hill, Blake Berman, breaks down the border by numbers just weeks into President Trump's administration.
A deeper dive into the new border numbers. I'm Blake Berman, host of The Hill on News Nation. Immigration across the southern border has been a top priority of the Trump administration so far. In February, the president's first full month of office, there were just over 8,000 encounters along the U.S.-Mexico border, significantly lower than the same month in previous years. Across the country, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, is continuing to arrest undocumented immigrants. In January, Under the first few days of the new administration, ICE arrested an average of 872 people per day. But in the first 3 weeks of February, the average was 582. That's lower than the start of the Trump administration, but higher than the average of last year's 255. Additionally, the percentage of criminals held in ICE custody is decreasing. Last month, that number was 53%, down about 10% from January and December. I'm Blake Berman, and this is the News Nation Political Minute.
You can find more news and analysis from Blake and our colleagues 24/7 on News Nation. To find News Nation on your screen, go to joinnn.com. That's today's Daily Debrief. I'm Judy Kurtz. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to The Hill's YouTube channel. And come back here soon for the intersection between politics and policy.